Beneath the weeping boughs of ancient oaks, the Ravenscroft manor stood in ruin, consumed by the grasp of time. Its once proud stone walls were now cloaked in twisting ivy, and the air smelled of damp earth and rotting wood. The skeletal remains of windows gaped like eyes long since blinded, their cracked frames blackened by decades of rain and wind. The moon hung low, an indifferent witness, casting pale light across the moss-covered cobblestones and broken statues that littered the grounds like forgotten memories.
Within this decaying kingdom, silence reigned, thick, suffocating silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the trees or the distant cry of a night bird. But in the depths of this stillness, something stirred.
She came with the mist, her scarlet gown rippling like spilled blood against the silver fog. The fabric clung to her, whipping and fluttering in the cold wind, though her feet never touched the ground. Her pale skin shimmered with an otherworldly glow, a stark contrast against the shadows that clung to her every move. Her face, delicate and almost unbearably beautiful, was marred only by the emptiness in her eyes, eyes that once must have been full of life, but now stared as if searching through the veil of time itself.
Lenore Ravenscroft. Once, centuries ago, this had been her home. The grand halls had echoed with laughter and music, the smell of candle wax mingling with perfume and rose petals. She had danced in these very gardens, her hands clasped in another's, spinning under stars that seemed brighter back then. But those days were long gone, and now the only sound was the soft rustling of dead leaves blown by the wind.
Her mind wandered, back to the night it had all ended. It had been a stormy evening, the kind where the sky wept as hard as the human heart. Lenore had fled the grand ball, a streak of scarlet against the black of night. Her gown, heavy with rebellion, swirled around her as she raced to meet the one man she truly loved, a painter who lived in the village below, his hands rough with charcoal, his smile the only warmth she had ever known.
But fate had not been kind. The river, swollen with rain, had claimed her before she could reach him. The cold water had filled her lungs, the current pulling her under. She remembered the taste of it, mud and desperation, the weight of her dress dragging her deeper into the abyss. Her last thought had been of him, his name a fading whisper as darkness swallowed her whole.
Now she was bound to this place, to this moment, an endless loop of searching, of waiting. Every night she returned, the ghost of her heartache more real than the flesh she had once worn. Her dress, that same scarlet dress, drifted in the wind though no breeze could touch her. She wandered the ruins, her fingers brushing the cold stone as if she could feel it. But there was nothing left to feel, only the hollow ache of eternity.
The village folk spoke of her in hushed tones, the lady in red, a warning for those foolish enough to wander too close to the forsaken estate. They said she lured men with her beauty, her voice a siren's call, promising peace but offering only the cold embrace of death.
On one such night a traveller came, an artist himself, though he had not heard the tales. He stumbled upon the mansion by chance, seeking refuge from the biting wind. The fire he lit in the hearth crackled feebly, struggling against the dampness of the air. His hands, rough with years of labour, rubbed together for warmth as he took in the grandeur that had once been. The high ceilings, the broken chandeliers, the faded tapestries, each told a story of a world long lost.
But as the fire's light flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, he felt a shift in the air. The temperature dropped, sharp and sudden, and the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. The sound of the wind outside became muffled, and in its place, a soft whisper filled the room, like a breath, barely there, yet undeniable.
He turned, and there she was. The Scarlet Lady stood in the doorway, her dress billowing around her like a living thing, her eyes, hollow and deep, locked onto his, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The artist felt his heart lurch in his chest, his pulse quickening. Her beauty was staggering, but there was something more, something ancient, something broken. He could feel the weight of her sorrow like a cold hand gripping his soul.
She moved closer, her steps soundless, her gaze never leaving his.
Come with me.
Her voice was a whisper of wind through dead leaves, barely more than a sigh. It chilled the air around him, making his breath visible as it escaped his lips in ragged puffs.
He was drawn to her, his feet moving of their own accord, as if some unseen force pulled him toward her. The scent of roses, long dead, hung faintly in the air. His mind screamed to flee, to run from this spectral beauty that exuded both longing and despair. But his body betrayed him, inching closer to her outstretched hand.
Just as his fingers brushed hers, cold as the grave, something snapped within him. The terror finally took hold, and he tore himself away, stumbling out of the mansion and into the night, his breath coming in gasps as he ran. He did not stop until the lights of the village flickered into view, and even then, the haunting image of her, draped in red, lingered at the edge of his vision.
Behind him, in the crumbling ruin of Ravenscroft Manor, Lenore lingered, her hand still reaching, her eyes still searching. The mist closed around her once more, and the mansion sank back into silence.
But the legend of the Scarlet Lady would live on. Those who dared to walk near the mansion on moonlit nights would speak of her. The woman who wandered, forever waiting, her scarlet gown like a beacon in the fog, and perhaps one day she would find the one she sought. Until then, she was doomed to drift through time, a ghost of sorrow and beauty, lost in the endless night.